She looks like her mother, so cute. When in front of my cousin's child, my husband Alan adored the baby with an exaggerated reaction. Ah, so small, soft and chubby, like an angel. He gently poked the cheeks, slid his fingers into the tiny hands, and cuddled, nuzzling his face against the baby. This display, so akin to cherishing one's own child, left everyone present taken aback. However, I was intently observing Alan amidst this heartwarming scene. I knew exactly why Alan was so interested in someone else's child. Really? She looks just like you, doesn't she? How does it feel to be a dad? What? Anthony, my father-in-law, was taken aback by my remark. What are you talking about? Are you out of your mind? That's why nurses are incompetent. Alan rebuked me as usual, without any sign of panic. But I was no longer deceived by Alan's words. The time had come to settle the scores for all the mockery he had directed at me. My name is Crystal Steeken. I'm 32 and work as a nurse. After dating for 6 months, Alan and I married a year ago. Alan is 2 years older than me and a doctor in the town where I work. He and his brother Griffin, my brother-in-law, work as doctors in the clinic founded by Alan's father. Anthony seems to be planning to pass the clinic on to Alan and always discusses important management plans with him. I started dating Alan on Anthony's suggestion. Back then, Anthony, my boss, asked me, "Would you consider Alan as your date?" This came shortly after I told Anthony about my desire to marry when we went out for drinks. At that time, Alan was 31, and Anthony might have been looking for a daughter-in-law to support the future hospital. Despite my hesitation, I suggested to Anthony that I was open to a dinner date, without any commitment to a relationship. Anthony happily arranged the dinner, and I ended up dining alone with Alan. Our interaction had been minimal, mostly work-related. And I avoided non-work-related chats, prejudiced that doctors always ponder complicated things. However, Alan was more conversational than I expected. We clicked talking about recent manga and novels, and Alan seemed genuinely happy talking with me. After another date initiated by Alan, we went to a movie on a day off. Though not overly talkative, Alan seemed to think we were a good match and confessed at the end of the day, leading us to start dating easily. It wasn't a passionate romance. But with Alan, I saw a secure future and a partner who understood the demands of our shared profession. 6 months into the relationship, we got married spectacularly. We invited relatives, friends, and colleagues and had the great ceremony. My friends envied me for marrying a doctor from a prominent family. I didn't marry Alan just because he was the son of a hospital director, but the security of our future pleased me and my parents alike. Initially, our married life seemed smooth. Alan disliked household chores, so I took them on myself. Being a doctor, he often returned home late, and I, finishing work on time, was determined to support Alan, who was always busy. After marriage, I realized I enjoyed doing housework. Before, it was a hassle for just myself, but doing it for Alan motivated me. Yet Alan never once said my meals were delicious. Knowing his tendency not to praise others, I still felt a bit dissatisfied. Still, I tirelessly worked to maintain a peaceful married life. 3 months into the marriage, I received a phone call. "Is this Crystal?" "It's Christina." "What's up?" The caller was my cousin Christina. For years younger than me, she lived nearby during our childhood. Crystal, Crystal. She always clinging to me like a real sister. Though we drifted apart as adults, we had reunited at my wedding. Christina's husband, Marlon, is the same age as me. A brilliant lawyer, he struck me as exactly Christina's type when we first met. Christina is stunningly beautiful, and at the wedding, she stood out even among the guests. My friends whispered, "Who's that beauty?" They were surprised to know she was my cousin, knowing my plain looks. I felt a bit upset about their astonishment at Christina's beauty. But I told myself I was the star of the day and let it go. But what could be bothering Christina now? I asked curiously. I didn't marry Alan just because he was the son of a clinic director, but the security of our future pleased me and my parents alike. "A checkup?" That's totally fine. So that was it, I thought, my guess off the mark. Thanks. I'll visit tomorrow then. Despite claiming a cold, Christina sounded energetic, making me wonder if she really had a cold or something else. Little did I know then that this call would threaten our daily life. As promised, Christina came to the clinic the next day, wearing a short skirt and an off-shoulder knit. I wondered if it was okay to expose so much skin when sick. It was a busy Monday morning, and we made her wait about an hour, but she seemed unbothered, fiddling with her phone. Finally, it was Christina's turn, just before noon when we wrap up the morning patients. I was waiting at the reception for the last consultation to end, as we break at noon. But Christina didn't come out of the consultation room, no matter how long I waited. Wondering if there was a problem, I was about to ask Alan, the doctor, when Christina finally came out. How did it go? You okay? Just a seasonal cold, they said. Glad it's only that and some cold medicine. Christina said, settling the bill. Just a cold, yet a 30-minute consultation? Normally, a cold checkup takes about 5 minutes. Moreover, Christina's face was oddly red, and I suspected she lied about the cold, fearing a serious illness. Are you really okay? Your face is red. Oh. Maybe the heating was too high, felt a bit hot. With a cool response, Christina said, I'll be back, Crystal, and cheerfully left. That night, I asked Alan about the morning consultation. Christina came today, right? Christina Compton, my cousin. The consultation seemed long. Was something wrong? Alan raised his brows slightly. No unusual symptoms, just lots of questions about foods and remedies for colds. That's why it took longer. Oh, I see. Alan said indifferently, heading to his room. Still, 30 minutes for a consultation seemed too long, but Alan dislikes discussing work at home. I decided not to probe further about Christina. However, my slight unease grew when Christina revisited the clinic a week later. Claiming her cold hadn't healed, she checked in and continued visiting the hospital, unfazed by long waits. Christina's consultation times were always long, sometimes it took 40 minutes. So, we intentionally scheduled her last before lunch breaks. And she agreed, letting later patients go before her without complaints. After about 5 visits, I began to genuinely worry. Despite enough time for the medicine to work, Christina kept visiting the clinic. If it didn't heal, I might need to refer her to a larger hospital, so I subtly inquired about her symptoms. Are you really okay? If it's serious, I can ask the doctor to refer you to a bigger hospital. Upon hearing this, I saw Christina's face turn pale quickly. Don't even think about referring me. I like this hospital the best, and I'm satisfied with the consultations. Don't make a big deal out of it just because we're cousins. Taken aback by her clearly angry tone, I froze, unsure how to respond. Seizing the moment, Christina said, I'll come again. And swiftly left. Stunned, I couldn't stop thinking about Christina all day. Surely she was hiding something. A secret she couldn't tell me. That's why she reacted so vehemently to my slight intrusion into her private matters. My suspicions about Christina began to grow. It was around this time that Alan's behavior changed dramatically. I had always handled all household chores, but Alan started complaining about my housework. Crystal, aren't my dishes still dirty? Really? Sorry. I'll wash them again right away. Doing chores so carelessly. Spotting a slight residue on the cleaned dishes, Alan scolded me more than necessary. Is it really worth getting so angry about? Shut up. How dare a nurse talk back to a doctor? I was utterly shocked by the sudden mention of doctor and nurse in a household context. Alan had always been the one to avoid work talk at home. But now he was misusing his position as a doctor. I wanted to argue back, but bewildered by Alan's sudden cold and sarcastic attitude, I decided it was best to leave him alone in his bad mood. Contrary to my hopes, Alan's bad mood wasn't just for a day. He complained that the rooms and shower were still dirty after I cleaned, dismissed my meals as terrible, and rejected the laundry for being wrinkled. "If you're so dissatisfied, do it yourself," I retorted. Such arrogance for a nurse. Only to be belittled. Despite feeling wronged, I couldn't bring myself to argue more, fearing it would only further hurt my dignity. Afterward, Alan constantly expressed dissatisfaction with me. It hadn't even been a year since our marriage, but what had changed his feelings? Racking my brain, I couldn't pinpoint anything I did to upset him. Could it be? A chilling possibility struck me, leaving me speechless. What if my suspicions were true? I felt a cold sweat run down my spine. I couldn't just ignore Alan's behavior. The next day, I started taking a certain action. Around this time, I received news from Christina about her pregnancy. "Congratulations! That's wonderful. I'll let everyone know once the baby is born." I was genuinely happy for Christina's delightful news. "Don't even think about referring me. I like this clinic the best, and I'm satisfied with the consultations. Don't make a big deal out of it just because we're cousins." Though she should be seeing an obstetrician, she claimed. "I still feel unwell." And kept coming. Strangely, around this time, the consultation times for Alan's other patients also started to extend. Especially the elderly took excessively long, causing the reception to overflow with patients. Patients complained. "The wait is too long." Even after Anthony, the director, warned Alan. He just insisted he was providing proper care, and if patients had complaints, they could go elsewhere. I thought he was going too far, but given Alan's recent demeanor, any admonishment from me would only aggravate him, so I left the issue of his consultation times to Anthony. About 8 months into the chaos of our married life, I finally heard from Christina about her baby's birth. Alan, for some reason, seemed very pleased with Christina's childbirth news. Despite never smiling in front of me, Alan seemed genuinely happy about the news of someone else's child being born. It made me want to make a sarcastic comment. "It's such a joyous occasion, isn't it? I can't wait to meet the baby." Alan appeared unusually elated. "Let's visit when things settle down. We can invite my parents and Anthony's family too. Let's all celebrate together," I suggested. "Right. I can't wait to see them." I watched Alan, who was unusually expressive, with a cold demeanor. About a month later, on a Sunday, our families gathered to visit Christina's home. My parents, Christina's parents, Marlon's parents, and Alan's parents were all there. Although we felt bad for crowding her home, Christina seemed happy to show her baby to everyone. "Sorry for bringing everyone over, Marlon." "No, thank you for coming." After exchanging meaningful greetings with Marlon, we all gathered around the baby and prepared to eat. Throughout the meal preparation, Alan's attention was solely on the baby. Once everyone started eating, he was the only one constantly distracted by the baby. The baby girl was indeed adorable, having soft and chubby cheeks, and everyone, including me, was smitten. However, Alan showed an extraordinary affection towards the baby, moving closer to her. "She's light. So soft and feels nice to touch." Without waiting for permission, Alan picked up the baby, a child whose neck wasn't yet firm. I worried he might drop her. Marlon seemed to share my concern, watching Alan closely. Christina, however, didn't seem to mind, tacitly allowing Alan's behavior. "She looks like her mother, so cute." With an exaggerated reaction for a cousin's child, Alan doted on the baby. "So tiny, soft and chubby, just like an angel." He poked her cheeks, put his fingers in her tiny hands, and cuddled her, rubbing his cheek against hers. This display of affection was so intense that everyone present was astonished. But amidst this charming scene, I was still closely observing Alan. I knew exactly why he was so interested in someone else's child. "Doesn't she look like Alan? How does it feel to be a dad?" "What?" Anthony was surprised by my statement. "What are you saying? Are you out of your mind? That's why incompetent nurses are." Alan insulted me as usual, without any sign of panic. His attitude changed from doting on the baby to mocking others, shocking everyone except me and Christina. But I was no longer deceived by Alan's words. It was time to settle the scores for the mockery he had directed at me. I might be talking back, but I can't accept being called useless by you. If anyone's useless here, it's you. Alan was taken aback by my assertive response. The relatives were stunned by the sudden outbreak of an argument between us. Only Marlon, who had been consulted about this matter in advance, and I, who knew the development of the situation, watched Alan calmly and confidently. What the hell? You're the one who suddenly started this. Underneath his defensive words, Alan's agitation was apparent. Seeing his reaction, I was certain of my suspicions. No. The one who was dishonest first was you. That baby, isn't it yours, not Marlon's? Marlon is infertile, you know. It was surprising for him as there was no way they could have a child so easily, especially at a time when he had no inkling. What? Infertile? What do you mean? Alan exclaimed in surprise, revealing his confusion. Understandably so. In Alan's mind, Christina's child was supposed to be Marlon's, and this revelation was enough to throw his plans into chaos. Right. That's why I've been feeling sorry for Christina, living with her while having these doubts. When she told me I'm pregnant, I honestly couldn't be happy. I was always doubting whether the child was really mine. Marlon expressed his suspicions towards Christina. Christina, who had been confident in deceiving Marlon, gasped upon hearing his doubts. I always thought Christina's behavior was strange. She kept coming to our clinic for a cold, but she never seemed that sick. The consultation times were unusually long compared to others, making me wonder what exactly was happening in the consultation room. Christina and Alan, what were you two doing in there? I gazed sharply at both of them. Well, Christina began, clearly flustered. I just did a regular internal medicine consultation, checking her nose and ears. It took longer because Christina kept asking in detail how to cure her cold. I've said this before. Alan raised his voice in a defensive outburst. However, what struck me was how casually Alan called Christina by her first name. Realizing his slip, Alan clamped his mouth shut. But it was too late. Everyone had clearly heard him call his wife's cousin, also a patient, by her first name. It seems you're not ready to admit it. Then, I have no choice but to show this. Disgusted by Alan and Christina's stubborn denial, I pulled out a large envelope from my bag. What's that? Alan asked, closely watching my actions. Without responding, I pulled out a thick stack of documents from the envelope. Since you refuse to admit your guilt, I have to show these to everyone. This is the evidence of your affair with Christina. I had it investigated by a detective. Remember how your attitude towards me changed when Christina started visiting the hospital? Complaining about household chores, belittling me as just a nurse. That's no way to treat a loving wife. Seeing Christina's frequent visits for medical examinations made me suspicious. Once I had it investigated, the results came quickly. With all this evidence, there's no escaping the truth now, is there? I shoved the evidence gathered by the detective right in Alan's face. Photos of Alan and Christina walking arm in arm in private, messages where Christina talked about the affair to friends. All clear proof of their affair. Alan, not expecting that I had hired a detective, was stunned by the evidence. Christina, turning pale, threw the documents aside, exclaiming, "What is this?" Relatives wore complex expressions. Observing the two, especially my parents-in-laws, looked furious, fists clenched. What on earth are you doing? Alan, what have you done? An affair with Crystal's cousin, of all people, is unforgivable. Abusing your authority as a doctor for a secret affair, don't you feel ashamed as a medical professional? To Anthony, Alan's affair was bad enough, but his relationship with a patient in the sacred workplace of a hospital was utterly inexcusable. Alan, visibly upset by his parents' anger, was at a loss for words. Instead of apologizing, Alan's response was unbelievable. What are you talking about? Crystal and Dad, you think I'm the bad one here? I was just following orders because Christina insisted. She took advantage of the fact that I couldn't refuse a patient's request. It's not my fault. Be angry at Christina only. Seeing Alan's self-centeredness even now, focusing only on himself rather than apologizing to me or Marlon, gave me chills. And his attempt to make Christina the sole villain was disgustingly transparent. Christina must have felt betrayed. Hearing Alan's words, she reacted instinctively in surprise. Alan, what are you saying? Well, it is true that I had feelings for you during Crystal's wedding. I visited your clinic because I wanted to see you. But who was it that changed his feelings when I insisted? You liked me, younger and beautiful, rather than the plain Crystal, right? You said it yourself. The marriage with Crystal was because your dad provoked you and you didn't have any choice. You wanted to marry someone pretty like me. I liked you because you were the only one who says that about me. Marlon is all about work, and he never cares for me. And yet, you are betraying now. Christina, revealing her true nature, screamed in near hysteria. Shut up. You were just too pushy, Christina. I just wavered a bit because of you. Alan argued, but it was clear from his earlier adoration of Christina's baby that he truly liked her. Unable to bear this chaos, I made eye contact with Marlon and my parents-in-laws, who were in the same situation. Christina, do you realize how much I thought about you and worked? It was wrong of me to neglect you due to my busy schedule. I apologize for that. But meeting other man behind my back is unfair. If you had complaints, I wished you'd told me directly. I was handling a big project, planning a trip once it was successful. But you hurt me by not admitting your own fault. I'm disappointed in you. Marlon rebuked Christina in a calm tone. But his arguments were so logical that Christina was left speechless. I'm sure he expresses his opinions in a logical manner like this even in his work as a lawyer. It was clear from even this brief exchange why he was a successful lawyer. I can't believe you're talking back to me. Christina trembled, unable to keep eye contact, perhaps realizing the gravity of her infidelity. That's enough. I've had it with your excuses. Alan, you're fired from the clinic. Forget about being my successor. Griffin will take over. Anthony glared at Alan, shouting decisively. Alan, stunned, had not expected his affair to cost him his job and the position of the next clinic director. What do you mean? Alan, trembling, shouted at Anthony for an explanation. I know everything. You've been overcharging elderly patients for unnecessary consultations, even tricking them out of their money during the sessions. I found out all of it yesterday. The revelation from Anthony astonished everyone present, including me. I had suspected something. Now I understand why Alan's consultations were unusually long only with elderly patients. How could you? Alan didn't deny his guilt, instead seeming angry about losing his succession rights. A nurse noticed your actions. The same nurse you looked down upon. They observed doctors closely. Thanks to her, I could see the truth. I was too busy to notice. Anthony looked at me with a kind smile. Really? So, he was protecting me. He was angry about how Alan had treated me. Realizing this, I felt tears welling up. That's why I'm cutting ties with you. Don't ever come back to our house. If you cause trouble for Crystal or Griffin, I won't forgive you. Now get out. Anthony's roar shook us all. Especially Alan. He screamed and fled the scene. Christina, left behind, looked awkward, but her parents began scolding her, which somewhat lightened my and Marlon's mood. I'm so sorry. Christina apologized to me and Marlon, but our discontent couldn't be so easily dispelled, and we looked at her coldly. Afterward, the day ended with Christina being reprimanded by her parents, and we all dispersed in a somber mood. Since then, Marlon and I have separated from our respective partners, and Alan and Christina remarried. Alan lost his position as successor, and Christina was forced into poverty. Alan tried to find work at other hospitals, but his misdeeds at our hospital were well known, making it impossible for him to find a job. Pride prevented him from pursuing work outside medicine, and he struggled to start job hunting. Christina, busy with childcare, couldn't work, and the couple frequently fought over her unemployed husband. A divorce seemed likely. I later learned that Alan had married me reluctantly at his father's urging. His sudden coldness and sarcasm were an attempt to provoke me into initiating a breakup. Knowing Alan's miserable current situation, I couldn't help but feel it served him right. Marlon and I received compensation, leaving the indebted couple to wonder about their future. Christina had dreamed of a wealthy life by marrying Alan, the would-be clinic director. But that dream had now turned to despair. No sympathy from me. She could have had a happier life with Marlon, but chose Alan instead. Let her suffer the consequences. As for me, I continue to work as a nurse at Antony's clinic. Griffin has taken over as the director, bringing back vitality to the hospital. Despite initially losing patient trust due to Alan's actions, we managed to regain it by refunding the overcharged fees and thanks to Antony and Griffin's diligent care. Firing Alan proved to be a wise decision. In my personal life, I've grown closer to Marlon. Sharing a similar ordeal, we found common ground. Marlon remains dedicated to his legal practice, always busy. But seriousness for his work is inspiring me to do my best. Maybe there's a future for us together. After all, life is unpredictable. Work and love, I'm determined to live passionately and enjoy every moment.